My name's Kev Jenkins. I'm the Supervising Art Director of Industrial Light and Magic in London. I'm part of the Global Art Department at Lucasfilm and Industrial Light and Magic, and I run a team here in London of art directors and concept artists, as well as being an on-set art director for Lucasfilm. Art direction really, again, we all sort of have the same title, but there are many facets to it, as you've said. There are on-set art directors, there are VFX art directors, and they do completely different things. And even we just have the term art director, and I'm sure in my position, for example, as the supervising art director of ILM, I run a team of people where we do visual development for movies and directors and for studios in the very early phases. And that is purely about the storytelling, the early design of a movie. Another aspect to it, if you were, is that we get we work for the studios or we work for the filmmakers, but also we can work for the production design as the film turns into a physical production as well. And again, a lot of people have the term art director, but it's quite sort of given to a lot of people who actually bring a lot of different facets to that position. I've done both. I mean, depending on who your director, your filmmaker is, they all work completely differently, and in some cases you will get, there's the script, there's the story, I need to develop this idea, I want to explore that idea. And in other cases you get we know we're roughly here, what do you think? And then you get to work within the bounds and you have more freedom. So it all depends on the filmmaker you're working with and how that filmmaker likes to work. Previs normally follows on from what we do. So I will be one of the first people on a film, developing, designing for quite a while, and sometimes previs is run concurrently, but in the very early stages of development, they're trying to solve different needs. One is about kind of pacing or how a sequence might unfold, and another one is pure storytelling and visual development. And so in the very early stages, there's not too much interaction, but as you go later on, previs will take designs that I may have worked on or models I've built, and they will get integrated into what they're doing to develop the previs further. Because we can work faster than previs in the sense that we are constantly sketching, designing, drawing, developing. So they're together, but they're not together in the way that maybe a lot of people think. Oh, never. In the sense that we may come up with the design, and we may push that design in a quite detailed fashion, but it's like anything else. In art direction, when you're actually building a physical set or designing a physical set or even a concept piece of art, it goes through layers of things. You come up with an overall idea, you work on it, you build it up, you do the models, you do the textures, you do rough versions, you paint it up, and then it moves through a process where it will go to, for example, in a physical set, it will go to live action set designers or art directors, or in the virtual space, it will start going through the look dev, the texture guys, all that sort of team and the modelers, and it will build up that way. But as far as being the final per se asset, I can't see that really being. My job is not to do that. My job is to create the ideas that will be assets that we'll use later on. Really early on, from the first few weeks of the conception. And most of that visual development is working on ideas we've heard that the directors may want to put in it, and our ideas that we think might be within that we could explore. But yeah, we're part of that initial visualist process where we're developing, those early ideas are kind of, there's a team, almost at the beginning. Yeah, I mean, it depends. On Star Wars, not so much. On other films I've done before, sort of Star Wars, I'll turn my hand to whatever needs to be done, because I don't see, a lot of people see environments as one thing or creatures as another, and I just actually see them all as design problems. So I will tackle them all in the sort of the same way. And my background before I worked in film sort of allowed a lot of sort of variations. So I just bring that, what I was doing before, to the same process. It's solving a problem more than anything else. Whether it's a a creature, a character, I don't know, exosuit like in Edge of Tomorrow or whatever it may be, they all have the same problem. What does the director want? What does the story need? And how do we drill down towards that design? So whether it's a set, spaceship, suit, creature, I tend to use the same formula each time. There's a huge learning curve to Star Wars. It turns out that what we've all realised is the hardest thing to design ever. There's a lot of, you can do fan art, everyone can draw an X-Wing, come up with an X-Wing, come up with the X-Wing that no one's seen before. But it's an X-Wing, so it's already been done. So it's an incredibly hard design challenge to work within Star Wars and not break it. And it's very easy to break it. And most of that comes from, we're all here because Ralph McQuarrie, the first concept artist with Joe Johnston, literally created the fabric of a world, the design look of a world that then Norman Reynolds, John Barry, the production designers, took and kind of developed further. And you've got to get in their heads of that kind of retro futurism. It's very naive Flash Gordon. You can see the influences from World War II, the Korean War, the space race, all those kind of things. And you've got to take those nods and the influences that they've seen, like Forbidden Planet in 2001, and those films like Silent Running, where a lot of that design vibe was all coming together to go into the original Star Wars. And we've had to go into that and then work out how to then take that further as if we were carrying on. I mean, we essentially made a sequel to Return of the Jedi. So how do you carry on that design process from a 1983 film? Me personally, I just thought I was making a film in 1986 and just that was my design philosophy. What would I have drawn like in 1986? So that was my starting point. Yeah, always. Only because we design for cinema and a cinematic experience. And how it is perceived in a shot is all that matters. Designing the other side of the door you'll never see makes no sense to me at all. So I don't work that way. So if I know what the shots are, I'll work within that. If I don't know what the shots are, I'll be as cinematic as possible. And I will design within a cinematic context where basically I will frame a shot and put the design in it rather than do an arbitrary design on its own. I think that's incredibly important because otherwise you are taking the design out of context and you are asking someone to judge that design based upon not how it will be finally visualized. So I believe that using shots is really the most important way to design. Yeah, even sketching, again, it goes back to, my huge influences of growing up in the 70s and sat in bed reading the art of Star Wars as a 10-year-old and seeing the way that, again, coming from watching Ralph McQuarrie, I used to be a book jacket artist as well. You're trying to get a story into a composition, and that's really what cinema is. Each frame is a story with within a composition, and so to me, it's a natural thing to go, well, okay, we need to design a Starkiller base. The designs of that shouldn't be, is the whole Starkiller base looking from 1,000 miles away? It should be, it's going to look like that in these shots, and it might be this way in these shots, and a little ship might go past in these shots, or whatever. That to me is the way that I'll try to drill down a design. That on top of what we get from the script and the way that it's been explained to us about what we, the vibe, the tone, all those kind of things that come through. The main challenge is to get into the head of the design language that was a sequel to Return of the Jedi, and not to do science fiction, because Star Wars is not science fiction, it's science fantasy, and trying to understand how to explain that to other people as you're kind of, you're visualizing these ideas. Any pressure, I'll be honest, I think was self-imposed and internal due to a lot of people's love of the Star Wars films, and so I never felt any external pressure. A lot of people said don't screw it up for a long time, but challenges? The challenges was we never gave up trying to make it look the most Star Wars looking film we could. Again, the film that was the sequel to Return of the Jedi, what would those people that weren't able to design it anymore, Ralph and Joe, what would they have done? That was where the pressure came from, if there was any pressure.